To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
It's connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that are shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
Welcome, fathers, mothers, and grandparents to The World Needs a Father, Bring Heaven Home series. Today we are speaking on Chapter 4, The Father, Mother, and Peer Wounds, and the Father Wound Reviewed and Healed. Indeed, we all have mother, father, and even peer wounds, and this is actually from adverse childhood experiences. We will talk about it later, about ACE, adverse childhood experiences, and we talk about mother wounds, father wounds, and even peer wounds today. And this is actually taken from JAMA. JAMA is the Journal of Medical Association, and you can see this 20 years ago in December 26, 2001, an original contribution, childhood abuse, household dysfunction, and the risk of attempted suicide throughout the lifespan. Findings from the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. What are adverse childhood experiences? ACE are actually potential traumatic events that occur in childhood between 0 to 17 years old. For example, experiencing violence, abuse, and especially neglect now. Witnessing violence in the home or community, or having a family member attempt suicide or die by suicide. That's actually complicated by substance use problems, mental health problems, and instability such as divorce or separation, or a family member in jail. And actually, adverse childhood experiences, ACE, are actually very common. About 61% of adults surveyed during that study across 25 states reported they have at least one type of ACE, adverse childhood experiences, and nearly 1 in 6 reported they have experienced 4 or more types of adverse childhood experiences. That is the experience of US, taken from the CDC website. And what about UK? In the United Kingdom, this is a chart showing, again, adverse childhood experiences, traumatic events that have negative and lasting effects on health and well-being. Especially emotional neglect is actually very common. And what happens to people who have actually more than 6 adverse childhood events, ACE, they can die 20 years earlier than those who have none. In fact, those who have 4 or more ACE actually have 3 times more of lung disease and adult smoking, 14 times of more risk of attempted suicide, 4.5 times likely to develop depression, and 11 times more of intravenous drug abuse, 4 times more of beginning intercourse by age 15, and 2 times of liver disease, most likely due to alcohol use. In fact, adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing society today, right? Because at least 67% of population have at least one childhood issues. And what about Asia? And this is actually a study that's done in Singapore, just published in 2020. And this top 5 most experienced adverse childhood experiences, you can see 46.5% actually quoted emotional neglect, right? Emotional neglect is very, very common. And 21.8% actually is on parental separation, divorce, or death. 8.2% because of abuse, mother or female guardian. Emotional abuse, 8%. And 6 is like living with household members who are mentally ill or suicidal. So what are some of the common questions that's asked? This is WHO Adverse Childhood Experience International Questionnaire. And you can see some of the questions are, did your parents or guardians actually understand your problems and worries? So as a child, this could become an adverse childhood event if you don't understand what they are actually going through. You don't understand what they are feeling. Does your parents or guardian really know what you are doing with your free time when you're not in school? Were your parents or guardians intoxicated or drugs? Do you live in a family member who are depressed and mentally ill? Do you see somebody being slapped, kicked, or punched or beaten up? Family violence. Did a childhood in your childhood, did a guardian scream and swear at you or insult or humiliate you all the time? Or very commonly, did someone touch you inappropriately? How often are you bullied? And this is really about peer wounds, right? Did a parent actually abandon you or throw you out of the house. Sometimes parents, out of frustration, may actually say, you leave the house, I don't want you anymore. And this could be hurtful to the child. And finally, sometimes there's also family violence against the children. And these are actually adverse childhood events for actually low-income families. We actually have from Children's Society of Singapore, 1 in 2 children actually have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences of either abuse, neglect, and childhood problems. So these are the top 5 that's actually for low-income families, and you can see it's very, very, very common, even in Singapore. So every season counts. This was from a previous chapter in the Warnings of Father. And you can see in the early years, 0 to 6, the mother impact is very important for for building intimacy. Otherwise, the child would feel neglected, emotionally neglected, and unable to form intimate ties. And of course, the father's impact in the 6 to 9 years on training basic competency and the physical part. And finally, the peer impact, 12 to 15 years. And you can see the peer impact stretch until 18 years old. Then the father would then affirm the identity and call the blessing on the young person and launch them into adulthood, into the workplace where the culture would be the main impact. And what are some of the mother wounds insecurity? A child that is actually neglected or abused will feel very insecure by mother wounds and father wounds. What are some of this? Let's identify. The neglect of impartation of intimacy. A lot of times a child would actually struggle with opening up emotionally, right? When people come close to them emotionally, they pull back. They feel lonely because they feel as if they are an island. They keep a distance from other people, right? Keep safe space because they don't know how to be intimate. They stand at the doors of people's life but seldom enter the inner chamber. They show what we call a sign of an orphan spirit, feeling that they do not belong, right? And what about nurture and care from the mother? If nurture and care is actually neglected or absent, they have a lot of issues with their own emotions. They feel lonely in their pain. They don't feel understood. They have a lot of fears and anxiety. They can't feel that people understand them or share. They react very strongly, when people are not sensitive to their feelings. This is a sign of being neglect in the nurture and care from the mother. Finally, social guidance. Mothers always tell the children and what they are supposed to do. So a lot of times, lack of social guidance, they become ignorant about the lives intricacy of others around them. They struggle to think and function broader than their own world. They're always in their own world. They score very low on emotional intelligence. When it comes to either connecting to people, emotions, or to managing other people's emotion, they find it very challenging. And of course, demonstration of validation. They struggle in the support of others and always be struggling to playing the second fiddle and struggle with submission. They always want to be on top. And they struggle moving others to support a cause that is not their own initiative. And they fail to validate other people. I've summarized the mother wounds. Now let's go on to the father wounds insecurity. What are some of the father wounds insecurity? That's the neglect of moral authority. Such a child, right, who's actually, even like myself, sometimes find it difficult to know what's right and wrong. No one actually shows me how to lead, they will say. They do not know what's absolute norms. That means there's no moral authority. They can't apply delayed gratification. They always want things now. Now means now. They struggle to stand under authority, and they just want to do things their way, right? A father also fail when they fail to or neglect conferring identity. These children grow up actually struggling with orphan spirit. They feel that they are not significant. They're plagued by insecurity and anxiety. Their identity becomes their work. The work becomes their identity. They don't know who they are and they're confused about their identity. They may even mask their real self when they meet people because they don't want to show their real self. And they can be aggressively defensive when criticized. Also, emotional security that's provided by the father is very important. When there's a neglect in this area, they feel that the child feels that they deserve nothing, they're worth nothing. They never get enough attention. They always be asking for attention. They also tend to support the underdogs, and they do not really understand their real feelings. They can't get in touch with their own real feelings, and they always feel that they need to earn respect. They need to always prove that they are good enough. Of course, fathers also very importantly need to affirm the children. When there's a neglect in this, the children may feel that they cannot make a significant contribution. Compliments are always observed with some suspicion. They feel uncertain about themselves. They tend to question themselves. They try to impress people all the time, and they struggle with immaturity. So we have gone through the mother, father, and peer wounds, adverse childhood experiences, especially emotional neglect. Such a person will feel very insecure because both mother and father wounds can cause insecurity, and we've identified those earlier on. And of course, peer wounds, you can see as a young teenager, as an adolescent, they struggle a lot with bullying and isolation with their identity. And more than 50% of children, it's very common in the schools, they get bullied. But do the father and mother know how they feel? What happened to the child, the teenager, when they're actually outside? What do they do after school? So these are some reflective questions, right? What adverse childhood experiences do you have? Right? Can you write it clearly down? Right? What are some adverse childhood experiences you have? Was it somebody scolding you and saying, I'm going to chase you out of the house? Or is it that your mother or father never affirmed you? Right? What mother wounds do you actually have? Maybe we have good mothers and good fathers, or we say they're good enough, but would you not ask God to review so that you may heal? Sometimes we feel that, never mind, let's just don't talk about it. Let's don't feel that pain. But this is the time actually we want to learn. Ask God, your father, to review the wound so that you can heal. What father wounds do you actually have? Would you not write it down in detail so that you can forgive? And this is very important to write down clearly what it was and how you actually feel, because we're going on to the next session, which is on healing of the father wound, mother wounds, and peer wounds. So see you in part 2 of the father wounds review and heal. Thank you.
The program is proudly presented by Global Reach Out. We welcome you to share our live enriching webcasts with family and friends through our website, global-reachout.org. Let's reach out to bless more lives together.